Hello, specimens! So today I thought I'd tell you a story. I thought I'd tell you the story about how Nate and I got together, or how we met. Have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you drink. Let's start with the first words I ever said to him, because I didn't know it was him. I didn't know who he was at the time, so it wasn't like how we officially met. But it was the first words I ever kind of said to him. I started homeschooling. I started being homeschooled in 3rd grade, and we joined this sort of homeschool group and for my area, and they had sports, soccer, softball, baseball. I don't know if they had any other. I did baseball and I did soccer, and and he and I were on the same soccer team. The first year I did homeschooling, and it was also his first year in the homeschool group. I remember this very well because I kind of remember weird things. We were sitting on the green and we were waiting for our coach, and I was like, I never really talked to anybody. I was really shy. I only knew a couple people. So I was sitting there, and there were these people who were talking. There were these people, there were kids who were talking, and there were kids who were just kind of like sitting there. And then I look over, and there's this kid that's sitting in front of me. He's got blonde hair, and he's a bigger kid. He's a bigger built kid. I wouldn't say he was fat. He was just bigger built. He was like sitting there. He's got these type of pants. Like, this is 2003, 2004. So, it was a trend of the pants that kind of like zip at the knee. And yeah, so I'm sitting there, I see him, and he's like wearing these kind of pants. And then I look away, and I'm like, I think there was like a bird or something, and I just kind of look away, and I look back at him, and I see like these ginormous holes in his pants, and like at his knee, and so the first thing that comes to my mind, I'm like, hey, your pants are ripped. And that people was my husband. Probably about 7 years later, I'm working at the local library in the town that I officially kind of like grew up in. And he would come in every Tuesday, and I worked every Tuesday. So like he would come in like every Tuesday, and I only knew him as Backpack Boy. He looked semi-familiar, but I didn't know who he was. It's like probably my last year working for the library. I don't know what it was like. It was a slow day. It wasn't the best day. It was a slow day. I had pulled out the drawer thing from there's a desk, and then there's a slot where you would return items, and then there's like this thing that catches it. So I pulled it out to get out all the items, check them in, and this one guy came in, and he dropped some stuff through the slot, and they landed on the floor, and I'm like, oh. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay. And so I went down, and I picked him up, and like I was underneath the desk thing, and then the door opens again, and I'm like, oh no, please let them not have anything. Please let them not have anything. He had stuff, and it was DVDs, and they went through the slot, and they like hit me in the head and all that stuff, and it's like, great. And so I picked them all up, and I poked my head up over them like, thanks. And that was Nate. And he looked over at me and was like, oh, I'm sorry. And he just avoided eye contact the entire time. And another time, now this is a faux pas on my part. It wasn't really a faux pas. It was more of just an embarrassing story that's actually really, really hilarious, because I ended up marrying him. So it's funny now. And it was funny then. Let's see. His family actually was really big. They were really big regulars of the library, and I didn't know they were all related. I didn't know that they were the family because they would all come in separately. One time, they all came in, and it was like on a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. Yeah, it was a Sunday because they were all dressed up. Yeah. So like they all came in, and like the entire family. And so they all came in at the same time. And it's like that's when the connection hit. It was like, oh my gosh, they're all family. So like it started off like I was like checking stuff out for them and stuff, and like I was talking to each and every one of them because I liked all of them, because like whenever they came in, it's like, oh, it's this person who always gets this stuff out, and this person, you know, when you work there for like 2 years and you see people on a regular basis, you kind of understand like that, right? You know, there's like, if you work in fast food, you know that somebody has a regular order. And he was getting Halo, World War documentary type stuff, or movies. Like I prefer documentaries to movies, but yeah, that's just me. So like there was like all this stuff that he was getting out, and it's like I was able to talk to all these other people about the stuff that they were getting out, and then there's him, and I can't talk to him about any of this stuff because like I don't play Halo. I didn't know anything about Halo, and I didn't know anything about this certain movie or anything like that. And so like here I've been talking away with everybody, and then I come to him and it's just silence. It's like an awkward silence for me because like here I've been talking to everybody, and then him, silence. And I didn't like, part of it is like I don't want him to think I don't like him. I don't even know him. I don't know why he would think that, but it's just like awkward. And so I was like I was searching for something that we would kind of like have in common, like a little connection type of thing. And then I see his name. And side note, I babysat 2 Nathans. I taught them in Sunday school. And I always liked the name. So of course, the really polite person that I am, the really polite person that would never say something that's really creepy, right? He's getting the stuff out, and I see his name, and I go, I like your name. Not creepy at all, is it? It was, thank you. and like we finished getting stuff out, and I'm like, here you go, and he just leaves, and I'm just face palming. And I remember my supervisor or somebody I was working with at the time, they said to me, did you just say to him that you like his name? And I said, yeah, I did. Well, I had to leave the library for certain reasons, mostly because it was time for a change, and I went to Subway, and like this is not sponsored at all, so that I'm just saying where I worked. I worked at a Subway, and I worked there for a very brief time. I couldn't stand it. It was too stressful. So I went there, and when I was putting in my application, I did not recognize his mom at all. And it turned out that I was handing my application into his mom, who was at the time assistant manager, and she knew my dad, and so they were talking away, and I had no idea who they were, you know, like who she was and stuff. And then she said, so have you graduated school yet? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, my youngest graduated too. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, oh, and he works here with me. I'm like, okay. And she's like, you remember Nathan? I'm like, no, I don't remember him at all. And then when she described, you know, she was saying like, you know, he was in homeschool group 2 and all that type of stuff. For some reason, his brother came to mind. I'm like, oh, him? And like, maybe. And so like, yeah. And then like people were saying like, when I started working there, I didn't meet him for like a couple weeks because I got vertigo, and so I couldn't work. But the time that I was working there before I got vertigo, all these other people were describing him for me, and I got so many different descriptions. First I got that he was tall. Then I got that he was a hard worker. Then I got that he was a very, very strict by the book type of person. And then I got that he was very, but he could be funny from another person. And I got like a whole bunch of different descriptions of him. So I was picturing somebody, and I'm thinking it's stereotypes. Somebody who works at Subway, and like I don't know, like eat fresh. It's supposed to be very healthy. So I was expecting a trim, fit person that was very tall and very strict, and yeah, also kind of jokey funny. I was very wrong in most of it. But when I met him, he was not fit. He was, and like I said, he's bigger built, but at the time he was not. He was fat. He was a fat guy at the time, but he's lost a lot of weight since then, which I'm very proud of him. But yeah, and actually that was when I met him, he was kind of like at the beginning of the losing of weight. So yeah. So anyway, so when I met him, it was very much different to what I was expecting. And then he was very polite. And then I hated him for a week because he tried to show me how to put meat on bread in front of a huge line of people. So, and yeah, and then, so like I started in like February. I think I started like January, February, mid-January, I think, maybe. But like I started like around that time, and then and then we kind of had a friendship build up over those few months, and we got along very well, and he was the only person I was able to really comfortably work with. Late April, my birthday's on May 2nd, so like we had a birthday party for me on May 3rd, and because I was turning 19, and so this was in 2014, all this happening. So I thought of him as a really nice friend, and we were pretty nice. I thought, hey, he's a really nice guy. He's probably like my best friend at work. And so I decided to invite him to my birthday party. So I decided to invite him. And this was something I'd never done before. I never invited a work friend to a birthday party for me because I never really had a work friend. So I invited him, and he came, and he brought some gifts. I remember what he gave me. He gave me TARDIS earrings, and I actually wore those at my wedding. Because they were blue. They were something blue and something old, something borrowed. So like my mom was saying, ooh, he gave you earrings, ooh, and I'm like, come on, it's just a friend thing. And turned out a week later, after that, he asked me for my dad's phone number, and he asked it would be weird if he asked that, and I'm like, no, not really, because my dad like guns and such, so I thought that dad wanted to go to a gun range or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, so but it turned out he was just asking if he could ask me out. My dad explained to him that I don't date, that I court, and all that stuff, and then I think it was on a Saturday that I was working, he actually asked me if I would consider courting him. I didn't really know how I felt about him at the time, but I thought, actually in my head, as most decisions I make, I say, why not? And I'm like, why not? So I didn't say that right out loud, but in my head I was like, why not? So like, I said, sure. And we're married. We obviously made it. So yeah, that's the story of how we started courting. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next week. I hope you survived hearing the entire story of how we met and dated, or got to dating and stuff, because we had a pretty much typical courtship other than the fact that we broke some rules. But I'd say that's a typical courtship. So bye-bye. Bye.